Hey, this is Tim Stevens at Vanderbloemen. And one thing that we wanted to do today is to bring you a very practical story illustration of a church that has had to lead through crisis in the past. So I've got today Daniel Grothe from New Life Church. He's the associate senior pastor at New Life. He also is the lead pastor of their Friday night service. I'll let him tell you a little bit about that. Daniel, thanks for hanging with me today for a few minutes, and hopefully we can offer some help to some churches. Glad you're here.
Yeah, happy to be here, Tim.
Tell us a little bit about, not everyone will know about New Life, where you're at, a little bit about the church, the size, the scope of your ministry, number of campuses, services, that kind of thing.
Yeah, we are a church of 7 congregations that meet in 5 different locations around the city that speak 3 different languages. Got a Spanish-speaking congregation and a Chinese-speaking congregation. We've been here 35 years. We're anywhere from 13,000 folks. Senior Pastor Brady Boyd, and good thing going. We preach live at all of our congregations, so we have a congregational model. So we've got a strong teaching team, a real deep bench of people that we built up through the years. So local pastors in each location that pastor very contextually, but we sync up our weekend services by preaching the same text together. So there's a lot of wiggle room to make it your own, but also we're on the same textual track.
That's fantastic. And a lot of folks may not know today, may not like, oh, New Life, I think I've heard of them. They've probably heard of you in the past. And so what I want to kind of focus on today, because every church leader right now is facing a crisis. Some church leaders are facing a huge crisis because giving has taken a big hit. Others are living more maybe in the fear of what could happen. Mm-hmm. I don't know of any church in America that's gathering, so we're figuring out new ways to do church. But I thought as I was preparing for today, getting on the phone on this Zoom with you, it would be really helpful because you've been on a team that has, through the history of New Life, led through 2 pretty significant crises. Yeah. And so I'd love to kind of just get you to unpack a bit of, give us a snapshot of each of those, what the impact was on the church.
Yeah. Well, when I came to New Life in 2005, we were on top of the world. And I sort of say that tongue in cheek. Our pastor was the president of the National Association of Evangelicals, a 30 million member group out of Washington, D.C., a representative body. When the Congress or Senate was working through legislation on marriage or on this or on that, they would call us and we would have press conferences. And Mel Gibson came to our church to release the Passion of the Christ to our 3,000 pastors at our conference. You get the scope. We were, Barbara Walters, Tom Brokaw, being interviewed for everything. And then our senior pastor was caught in a scandal, and now all of a sudden we're on the front page of every news media for all the wrong reasons. So that happened in 2006. We discovered we were $26 million in debt. Wow. The recession hit in 2007. We had to lay off 44 people overnight, which was absolutely heartbreaking. We got a new senior pastor in 10 months after the crisis hit. And on his 100th day in office, we had just finished up our second service, 9 and 11 a.m. It's 1 p.m. We're standing in the children's hallway. Dr. Jack Hayford had just preached a great sermon. The church is beginning to rebuild trust and getting to know our senior pastor, Brady Boyd. And I'm standing down toward the end of the children's hallway when all of a sudden I hear, ba, 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 ba. There's a man who comes on campus with an AR-15 and 1,000 rounds of ammo and 2 handguns, and he's spraying bullets everywhere. Parents diving under desks and running into bathrooms with their kids. And I raced into Brady's office, and he and Jack Hayford are in there having lunch. And I said, there's a shooter on campus. And so he ended up killing 2 girls, teenage girls in the parking lot, 16 and 18-year-old girls. And then he came in, ran into our children's hallway, and a security guard with a handgun hit him in the leg, and he fell down and took his own life in the children's hallway. So we have a double murder suicide on our campus. The recession's hitting. We're $26 million in debt. We laid off 44 people overnight. And now on his 100th day in the job, our senior pastor is standing in front of cameras with helicopters flying over us saying, we just lost 2 girls here today and there was a suicide on campus. So we didn't think it could get any worse. I mean, my boss, Brady, we were sitting in the back of a police car It's cold. It had snowed that day, and we didn't have our coats because we didn't expect to get whisked out by the SWAT team. And they turned on the heater, and we're sitting in the back of the police car, his 100th day in the job. And he looks over at me and he says, "So I guess all the easy jobs were taken, huh?" And it was kind of one of those moments where you're either going to laugh or you're going to cry.
Yeah.
And we had to create a little levity there because we were getting ready to drive to the hospital to tell a mom that she had just lost 2 of her 4 daughters. So when we talk about crisis at New Life, it feels like, yeah, this is native territory for us. We are a story, we've seen God redeem. We're down at $11 million debt, and the church is larger than it was then, and the team is stronger. And so it can be done. This is like the story of Scripture. This is what God does for his people. But yeah, crisis is a moment where things get revealed and where you get tested. And we've learned some things along the way through the crisis. I think the first thing that I'd love to share about walking through crisis is, one, as the leader, you've got to take care of yourself. You've got to realize that, you strike the shepherd and you scatter the sheep. And if this is a moment where you fall apart, the church is going to fall apart. So you've got to be really careful. You got to take care of yourself. Exercise, get outside, get vitamin D. If you're sitting in front of your screen all day or responding to texts all day, anxiety, it sits in us. And psychologists and psychiatrists will tell us that anxiety, you have to move it around. You have to shift it. You have to repurpose that negative energy and turn it into something positive. So beating your body up with exercise, getting outside, going on a run. If you can't do that, go on a brisk walk. You gotta let that wash over you so that you aren't this pent up ball of negative energy.
That's I think great for like the season we're in right now, when everyone is literally, stuck, going stir crazy, and they got their kids all over their house doing online school, and they don't even have, I'm an introvert. So some of my introvert time is commuting or being on an airplane, or you don't even have that anymore, right? You're just, and I know that's really great. It's great counsel, great advice, because it's really easy during the season. You can work 16-hour days just
exactly
for everyone else, and forget about caring for yourself.
Close the laptop, walk away, get outside, go pray, go be quiet, be among nature. So yes, get out, take care of yourself.
That's great. That's a really transferable learning. What else do you think could help church leaders today?
Second thing is, I would say you got to find a sage, someone who's weathered multiple storms, someone who will look at you in this moment and they won't say it, but they'll be thinking, "Oh, bless your heart." Like you think this is the hardest thing you've ever faced. Someone who has lived and logged miles. For me, during the New Life time, I walked into a Goodwill on a Monday, my day off, and I found this book on the shelf, The Contemplative Pastor, and I started reading it. And that day, I don't ever do this, but that day I read the entire book, 171 pages. It was by Eugene Peterson. And I thought, this is the guy who translated the message, right? So I wrote him a letter and I said, "Dear Eugene, could I spend a day with you? I don't know who you are. I don't know where you live." I sent it to his publisher, and they forwarded it to him, and he wrote me back a personal letter. And he said, "Yes, I'd be willing to spend a day with you here in Montana, but not so fast." And he made me write papers on what is church and what is pastor, and he put me through the ringer. And that began a 10-year mentorship with him, where he really made me rise up. You got to find someone who has lived and weathered the storms, and who can provoke you and challenge you and encourage you. Someone who can go, "Hey, listen, I've been there, done that. You're going to make it." Someone who's not going to be freaked out by your doubt, by your worry, someone who's not going to make you feel bad for that, and someone who is going to really stand with you and walk beside you in that time. It's unique as a pastor, because if you're finding someone that's in your church, very often they need you to be strong hero pastor all the time. So someone outside of your day-to-day, someone who can listen to you, someone that you can say anything to and it's not going to cost you. So I would really encourage you, like, who are you running things by? Who Who are you bouncing stuff off of? Who are you having pray for you, lay hands on you, rebuke you, encourage you, instruct you? You got to find a sage, someone who's been there and done that multiple times.
That's great. And that I assume could be anyone who could speak godly and spiritual words into your life.
Yes. Yes.
It doesn't need to be someone that you currently know, like in your case, not someone you didn't know, but someone you respected.
Yep.
That's great wisdom. And I suppose at the end of this, we'll give everyone your phone numbers so you can be that for everyone.
Come on, holler at me. Let me say one other thing, Tim, that we discovered at New Life is that this is a moment in crisis that you can build trust with your team in a way that you could never build trust before. There's something about foxhole friends. There's something about joining arms and saying, you know what, if we don't have each other, we're going to crumble. We're going to make it together. Look me in the eyes. We're going to make it. And this is a chance for you to begin to trust staff that you may 6 months ago have thought weren't ready, but now it's their time, and you give them this project, you turn them loose, you let them lead this thing that you were holding on to before. This is a great moment for your team to be bonded, to be gelled together. So there's just something about a foxhole friend that a crisis can only bring a team together in the way that a crisis can. So I'd really, really encourage you to take care of each other, to look each other in the eye, and to grow in your trust in this time. Don't waste this crisis.
That's really great insight. And you know what's interesting, what I've learned in the last 2 weeks, when every single person you're talking to is like this, virtual, I would have thought, going into this, and I lead a virtual team, so I knew some of this, but now 100% of my conversations are virtual. I would have thought that you lose intimacy, that, but in some ways you gain it because you're in it together.
Exactly.
You're only 12 inches, eyeball to eyeball away from the person you're talking to. And so there's something about this, even when we do, team meetings and there's 10 of us on the screen, there's almost more intimacy in that than if you're 10 people sitting around a table and someone's on their phone and someone else is clicking on their laptop. Right. There's something about that. And I think leaning in on that is, I'm learning can be just as good, just as close.
We're seeing the redemptive nature of technology maybe for the first time in a long time, where social media is not this chippy, partisan, I'm going after you, but we're using it to take care of each other, to check on each other, to share our hearts with one another. So yes, leverage the moment and build trust with your team.
Question for you. I've talked to lots of pastors in the last week to 2 weeks who are right in the middle of like, we have to let some people on our team go. Like it kills us. Like, we thought we'd be doing this till the end of time.
Yeah.
We're friends. We're in the same group. We've raised our kids together. And I got to go to this person and tell them, I can't keep you on staff. Any thoughts for pastors that are facing that right now?
Yeah, I would suggest reading Andy Crouch's recent article that he wrote with Praxis Labs. It's super long, so carve out 20 minutes. But he says a lot of people think that this might be a short blizzard. A lot of people think this might be a long winter. But many people are suspecting that this could be a little ice age, a 12 to 18 month interruption. And God forbid that it is. But he's saying that as leaders, it's our job to look at the very worst case scenario and to begin to make plans. Don't let this sneak up on you. And that's actually malpractice. That's leadership malpractice. If you're ignoring the signs, if you're just, so if you know that this is a moment where you have to have those conversations, I think to be honest, to share your heart, to be brief. I mean, look, there's nothing worse than when you have to fire someone, you turn it into a 90-minute emotional, it's basically your therapy session. And that's disrespectful of someone's time. If you've got to do it, say it straight, say it kindly, be as generous as you can with severance, but get it done. And then be the person that walks with this person over the long haul, if at all possible. At these moments, sometimes they're a break. It's the Romans 12, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with all people. Sometimes when these moments happen, people say, you're dead to me, I'm never talking to you again. You can't control that. But as far as it depends on you, if you can be gracious, if you can be generous, if you can bring this person back on when there's a rebound. And actually in this article that Andy writes, he co-writes it with the CEO of Praxis Labs. And Andy said in 2003, this guy had to fire me. And he did it graciously, and he was generous to me. And here we are, 17 years later, working on the same team. So in the kingdom of God, if you're honest, and if you do it right, and if you try to do right by people, you can see redemptive threads emerge in the future. But if you know that it's happening and you ignore it, this is leadership malpractice.
Yeah.
So do the right thing and do right by people. One
thing I learned in the 2008, 2009 meltdown, we had to let a lot of staff go at my church, is, as a pastor, you wear several hats, but two of them one's an employer hat,
yes,
and a pastor hat.
Yeah.
I learned that sometimes the same person can't wear both of those for somebody.
It's true.
If I'm the one that has to deliver the news that we can no longer employ you, sometimes it's better if there's another pastor that can be like, my whole job is just to pastor you.
Agreed. It gets very confusing when those lines are blurred, and it can turn into spiritual manipulation or abuse if you're not careful. And so you're right. You have to know, what hat am I wearing right now? Is this boss, CEO, leader of the organization hat? And if so, go in and do what you need to do, and then follow it up, or let someone else who can put on pastor hat follow it up. Yeah. And you're exactly right. Great point.
That's great. Well, Daniel, I don't want to take too much more of your time. Any last comments or thoughts for church leaders that are kind of in the middle of this right now, which is all of them?
Edwin Friedman wrote a book 20 years ago called Failure of Nerve. And he was a Jewish rabbi and a world-renowned psychologist, an incredible combination. And he says that good leaders are those who practice non-anxious presence. And he said very often in most rooms, the most immature person wins the room. The one who has the most anxiety wins the room. And so I think leaders in this moment, it's the time to work out your issues in private, to go before the Lord, to wrestle with your anxiety, to pray, to talk to your sage, to say those things that are scary to say in public, say those things in private, so that when you do step into the leadership moment, you can come in as a self-differentiated leader. You have possession of your person. You're under control. You're non-anxious. And I think every organization responds to the energy of its leader, negatively or positively. And so it's already a crisis. We're already in a moment of great disruption and disequilibrium. If the leader walks into the room and is disrupted and has disequilibrium, the whole thing tilts. But if you can have worked your stuff out in private so that when you show up, you can stand on the bow of the ship and point the way and say, here's where we're going, and do it graciously, but in a non-anxious way, I think your church has a great potential to thrive in this moment. So I'd really encourage you, pastors, to wrestle in private, to go before the Lord, to work out your stuff so that when you're with your people, you've got composure and poise and you're a non-anxious presence.
Man, that's a great word. And it goes back to your first point of taking care of yourself.
Yeah.
And so huge, and finding people to speak into your life. Man, Daniel, I thank you so much for your time. I know these are busy days for all of us, and appreciate you taking a few minutes to pour into church leaders.
Happy to be here. Bless you all.
Thank you.